Salmon Chase. Salmon Chase was born in Cornish, New Hampshire on January 13, 1808.
His mother was left with 10 children and few resources, and so Salmon lived from 1820 to 1824 in Ohio with his uncle Bishop Philander Chase, a leading figure in the Protestant Episcopal Church in the West. Salmon Chase married Catherine Garnis. She was the daughter of a local businessman. Their marriage ended in her death in 1835. Chase then married his second wife, Eliza Smith, in 1839. Salmon and Eliza had 3 children before she died in 1845. Chase then married his third wife, Sarah Bella Dunlap Ludlow, in 1846. Salmon practiced law in Cincinnati. He defended runaway slaves and those tried for assisting them. He was devoted to the abolition of slavery.
Chase was named the Attorney General for fugitive slaves when his defense of escaped slaves were seized in Ohio under the Fugitive Slave Law of 1793.
Salmon Chase was appointed as senator in December 15, 1864, by Abraham Lincoln. He was elected as a Republican to the U.S. Senate. He resigned 2 days later to become Secretary of Treasury under Lincoln.
Some of Salmon Chase's landmark cases that he ruled on would be Texas versus White in 1869, in which he asserted that the Constitution provided a permanent union, or Viazzi Banks versus Fenno in 1869 as well, in which upholding banking legislation of the Civil War imposed a 10% tax on state banknotes.
Salmon Chase's face is on the $10,000 bill. The New York Times versus United States case was argued June 26, 1971, and decided June 30, 1971. This case was about the freedom of press, the First Amendment.
The New York Times versus the United States was a landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court on the First Amendment. The ruling made it possible for the New York Times and the Washington Post newspapers to publish the classified Pentagon Papers at the time without risk of government censorship or punishment.
Richard Nixon claimed executive authority and forced the New York Times to suspend publication of classified information. In 1967, a man named Robert McNamara ordered for a secret study to be done on the effects that the United States policy had on the Vietnam War. A few years later, when the study was done on the Pentagon, a man named Daniel Ellsberg came across the documents of the Pentagon. He then sent the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. The information found in the Pentagon Papers involved various actions of the United States government in Vietnam, including illegal bombings and use of deadly chemicals. The New York Times then published articles about the Pentagon Papers. President Nixon then found out and issued prior restraint using his executive power. President Nixon and his Attorney General used the Espionage Act from World War I to claim that the publication of the New York Times Pentagon Papers would put the United States in danger. The court ruled that the New York Times had the right to publish the Pentagon Papers due to the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. The publication of the Pentagon Papers educated the public on what was going on in the Vietnam War. This caused the public to oppose the Vietnam War at an even greater percentage.